I suppose an explanation is in order. My computer suffered damages, and I've been spending all this time trying to get a new one and adapt to new recording software. I apologize for the delay, everyone.
With that apology out of the way, let's finish off this response to Campster once and for all. Last time, we discussed Ken Levine's handling of politics in the original Bioshock, and what it says for his views on politics as a whole. Now, with that in mind, let's assess how Infinite approaches the subject.
And the pattern repeats here. Concepts of American exceptionalism, racial segregation, economic inequity, religious zealotry, and more don't really get discussed so much as simply displayed.
They're not the focus, though. Infinite's political interest is the dangers of extremism. All those concepts are there strictly to exemplify that point. For instance, nationalism. Columbia was built to serve as a representative of American ideals, with the secret goal of destroying foreign enemies.
When they didn't get the praise they thought they deserved for the destruction of Peking, Columbia branded the US an enemy and started making plans to destroy it.
The seed of the prophet shall sit the throne and drown in flame the mountains of man. Say what you will about Comstock. He was a hell of a fortune teller. Wasn't the torture that broke me. Wasn't the indoctrination. It was time. Time rots everything, Booker. Even hope.
Remember, Ken Levine loves writing characters becoming their own antithesis, and Columbia is no exception. It became what sought to destroy a foreign threat to America.
With racism and religion, Levine admits to having trouble.
The city of Columbia rests on the shoulders of its enigmatic founder, Zachary Hale Comstock. As the leader of the founders, he created a city based on religious devotion and American exceptionalism. A character based on these ideals could easily be reduced to a collection of villainous tropes, and it proved a challenge to keep his motivations believable.
He was one of the toughest characters for me to write because I don't feel, I don't have a religious background. And let alone sort of, the darker side of his beliefs and the racist side of his beliefs. But so I really had a lot of trouble writing him for a long time. And it occurred to me I had to figure out why do people follow him? That was the key to his characters. Why do people follow him? What does he provide to them? And I struggled with that for a long time because obviously, an ecstatic religious experience is something that a religious leader provides, but I don't have a connection to as a writer. And it's always hard when you try to write something that you have never felt, and that would feel dishonest to me. So I struggled, and actually I ended up having some conversations. There was a scene in the game at the end where there was a gentleman here, one of our artists, who got to a point in the game, played it, turned off his computer, opened up Microsoft, or turned off Bioshock, opened up his computer, opened Microsoft Word, and wrote a resignation letter. It had offended him so much. And I ended up having a conversation with him. My first impulse was, I don't want this guy to go, because he was a good guy and a talented guy. And we ended up actually having a long talk, and he was an extremely religious guy. And when we started talking, I realized that something I could connect to was the notion of forgiveness, and how powerful, what an important part of that is of the New Testament, and why, Christ was such a revolutionary figure. And thinking about how I would incorporate that notion, the power of that notion, into Comstock, into sort of his world, was to me the key, because who hasn't done things that they don't want to be forgiven for?
Just because the city flies don't mean it ain't got its fair share of fools. All right. Still got a girl to find.
However, they still played their role. The racism is a consequence of the natural extreme of hypernationalism.
Nationalism isn't an evil in and of itself.
Infant never says that, just as the original never said that objectivism is evil. Instead, it is simply portraying what could happen if one is not careful. That is what the racism presents.
With religion, Comstock is a man who is desperately hiding from his own guilt, incapable of understanding Christianity's philosophy of forgiveness.
Since he can't accept the racist crimes he had committed, he perverts Christianity to justify racism.
What exactly was the great emancipator emancipating the Negro from? From his daily bread, from the nobility of honest work, from wealthy patrons who sponsored them from cradle to grave, from clothing and shelter. And what have they done with their freedom? Why, go to Finkton and you shall find out. No animal is born free, except the white man. And it is our burden to care for the rest of creation. And the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great, and he repented he had made man on the earth. Rain. 40 days and 40 nights of the stuff, and he left not a thing that walked alive. You see, my friends, even God is entitled to a do-over. And what is Columbia if not another ark for another time? As the months and years turned to memories, so did the men of Congress turn to righteousness. And through the technology of men, the dollars of Washington, the Lord worked his will upon Columbia and raised her high above the Sodom below. And when I came to Washington, there were few in Congress who saw my vision for Columbia. But it is the burden of the prophet to bring the wicked to righteousness. For what am I, if not a mirror to reflect the face of God? To tax the black more than the white, is that not cruel? To forbid the mixing of the races, is that not cruel? To give the vote to the white man and deny it to the yellow, the black, the red, is that not cruel? But is it not cruel to banish your children from a perfect garden? Or drown your flock under an ocean of water? Cruelty can be instructive. And what is Columbia, if not the schoolhouse of the Lord?
And this is directly hinted at by Fink.
I told you, Comstock. You sell them paradise, and the customers expect cherubs for every chore. No menials in God's kingdom. Well, I have a man in Georgia who'll lease us as many Negro convicts as you can board. Why, you can say they're simple souls in penance for rising above their station. Whatever eases your conscience, I suppose.
The economic inequality is a side element of the racism, and serves to set the stage for the Vox Populi revolt, which, you guessed it, also devolves as it follows its natural extreme, because no one on board was careful.
Oh, their iconography is brought up plenty, but it's mostly just to use it as a plot beat. And in a way, that makes it all the worse. The game takes something as big and complex and serious as institutionalized racism, and instead of talking about its root causes or its human costs or the struggle to change hearts and minds and laws, it basically just uses it as a shorthand for, these white folks sure are evil.
Fair enough. I acknowledge this near the start. However, as I said before, there's more to it than that.
If the game attempts to take any political opinion at all, it's a milquetoast centrism that borders on nihilism by making both sides of the Colombian Revolution morally repugnant.
When it comes down to it, the only difference between Comstock and Fitzroy is how you spell it.
By that logic, 1984 is also a nihilistic story. It just tells the tale of the world's greatest dictatorship, and never says, this is the result of conservatism, or this is communism. It doesn't even tell us how to dismantle it. Why do we accept that as an important story? Because it's a cautionary tale. It offers us warning signs so that we can be on the lookout for the next person who tries to create a dictatorship, regardless of party or political affiliation. And that's what Infinite is with this Civil War plot. It's not interested in stroking your ego or telling you that you're good and the other guy is bad. It's trying to tell us the dangers of becoming too comfortable with our own sense of self-righteousness.
The city of Columbia was originally built as by the United States government in the 1890s as a sort of a floating World's Fair, something they could float from one corner of the earth to the other and demonstrate to the rest of the world the success of the American experiment. Think of the Statue of Liberty, but it can move around the world. And what happened was there was a power struggle within Columbia. And this fellow who you'll sort of start to get a sense of in this demo, named Comstock, came into power in the city. And he had a bit of a different view. He had a more, extreme view of what the mission of America and the world is. And there were some people in the city who didn't like that. And that group was Vox Populi. And it started as a sort of a resistance, almost like a student movement against, the founders, the founders group that Comstock led, as, working to help, to unionize workers, to protect the rights of minorities, things like that within the city. But as the conflict between the founders and the Vox Populi got more extreme, each side started sort of ramping up their actions. And by the time you get to Columbia and you'll see the Vox Populi in the demo, the conflict is pretty extreme, and both sides have a bit of an attitude of, well, as long as we win, nothing else matters. And you encounter the founders last time and sort of got a sense of the dark side of them. And this time you'll encounter Daisy Fitzroy, who's the leader of the Vox Populi. You'll hear her speaking, you'll see her people at work, and what they're doing is they're essentially cleansing a portion of the city, moving the founders out of a portion of the city, a rich part of the city, and coming in themselves. And it's not a pretty picture to behold.
Sons of bitches! What am I gonna do with that?
Best if we don't draw attention to ourselves.
Hey! It's just a postman. He didn't hurt anybody. It's the witch! It's him! It's the witch! Take cover!
Admittedly, this background on the Vox Populi is left out of the finished product. Instead of being a social movement that turned into a rebel group, it was a rebel group from the very beginning, having been founded by Daisy Fitzroy after she was framed for a crime she never committed. In other words, instead of being a reflection of the world, the Vox Populi is a reflection of Fitzroy, then later Elizabeth, which I'll discuss later. Most importantly is Ken Levine's stance.
And so you now have to, when you're on this sinking ship, you also know that the only way down to Proxima is through this asteroid field, but a human can't pilot that ship down to Proxima. So you need essentially one of your three worst enemies who have this, they're machines. So they have, picosecond reflexes and, ability to use LiDAR and all these other things to navigate the field. So they need you to get down to Proxima because they all have a different vision of what the future of the mission, what we call capital M mission, the future of getting humanity to Proxima is, they all have a different vision for it now. They were a family, essentially. Okeke and Tom were married, and Hope was their adoptive daughter. So they have a family that used to be, and now they're all broken up and at loggerheads with each other. And so you're negotiating with the three of them. They serve a similar role in some ways to Elizabeth. They're these companions you interact with the world, but their opinions of you is constantly shifting and constantly changing, and the world is reconfiguring itself to account for your relationship with them.
Don't you speak to her like that.
Or what, Dad?
Now you listen to me.
Hit the bricks, Tommy.
Child, I am telling
Hit
you.
the f***ing bricks.
Are you helping? Every time you help Tom, you're pissing off Nefertiti and you're pissing off Hope. Every time you help Hope, you're pissing off the other two, and they're constantly in this sort of this conflict with the three of them, but also learning about them, building friendships. And imagine being stuck in this situation in a lifeboat with your worst enemy and having to learn maybe the things you thought about them, the assumptions you made about them weren't entirely true. Maybe you get to learn about what they had to go through, their challenges in life, and how they became such a thorn in your side and you became a thorn in their side. And it's really a journey of discovery.
Please do this for me, Judas. Help me end this thing.
You have to live through your characters and not judge them so you can present them honestly. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just doing a blow-up doll of them, you're not really telling the whole story. You're more writing propaganda than you are writing, I'd rather write questions than answers.
Right.
And let the audience participate in figuring out what's right.
I love that. And I feel like there's something of that that's lost in the movies right now, games right now, where it just doesn't feel nuanced, and it doesn't feel like there's room for exploring ideas that are questionable. Like, I wonder, do you think, we can cut this out if you want, do you think that Bioshock Infinite would be a game that would be allowed right now? Like, especially that first sequence where you pick up the baseball, right? Would your publisher say, hey, bro, you got to take that out?
I think it would be allowed at Take-Two, because Take-Two is an exceptional company, and I'm really grateful to work there, because for instance, our first Bioshock, the first game we did for them, you would essentially murder the little sisters if you had a choice.
Right.
And at the time, there was a bunch of people who wanted to get that game canceled, and including people, we had to argue in the studio, with the publisher, to include that element. Because without that element, I don't think that game is Bioshock. And we had somebody at the publisher who really believed in us, and he supported us, but that was a close deal that almost got taken out. By the time we did Infinite, people, they trusted me more, but again, it was a very different political time. Mm-hmm. But certainly we had people who were very unhappy with some aspects of Infinite, and outside of the publisher, because they didn't agree with some of the political belief systems. I find people tend to like it when their opponents' political belief systems get beat up on, but if their beliefs get beat up on, they get and they'll cheer the thing on. And the truth is, look, I'm infallible. Sorry, I'm infallible. I'm fallible.
Yes.
You should just clip it out. Ken Levine says I'm infallible. I'm very fallible.
Yes.
But I can promise you, I make an effort to not just stereotype anybody.
Yeah.
Just let them live and breathe and try to see the world through their eyes. Even people who end up doing terrible things. I'm fascinated how you get from the baby in the crib to the monster.
Yep.
What happened?
I mean, that's one of my favorite books. It's my third time going through it, is Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And just trying to figure out, like, I still can't wrap my head around it. I cannot wrap my head around what happened, like how it all spiraled out of control. And obviously there's the reasons, but it's like, it's so distant. So you go, okay, well, that's that time. That wouldn't happen now, And clearly that's not true. It's like, we're still human beings, right? We still have the DNA that was in the 1930s and 40s. So it's really, really difficult to wrap my head around these crazy movements. You know what I mean?
But you see, we've lived in a time of intense political partisanship. So you can see how people get like political violence, right? You see a crowd who's very excited. You see various crowds. They tend to be on the extreme ends of both sides of the political spectrum. I don't even like saying both sides because
there aren't sides anymore.
There
It's
aren't
like,
two sides. Yeah,
it's a collage, dude.
It's a collage. But people out towards the extremes tend to be big fans of political violence. And they'll make excuses for it. And I think we're living probably people don't know, but like when I was a kid in the I was born in the late '60s and grew up in the '70s and '80s, but there was bombings almost every day in the early 1970s by groups like the Weather Underground and the Sudanese Liberation Army. I don't know if you know the Patty Hearst story, but there was it's very strange. We don't really learn about it, but there was a lot of sort of extremist leftist groups in the 70s that were doing like almost daily bombings. They tended to be not targeted at people, but they could be. There were kidnappings, there were bombings, there were murders, and it was. I think what happens is you get political movements. Like if you look at the 1960s, you get a lot of political activism, and then some people, most of it out of the Vietnam War. Some people, when the Vietnam War ends, they go home, right, and they say, okay, we've mission accomplished. We've ended the war, but some people don't go home, and they get more and more extreme. And this is not contained to any political affiliation. It can be any political affiliation. And there's a great book I'm reading now called Days of Rage about the bombings that happened then and the violence that happened then. That was very much a lot of similar language to stuff you see today, but nobody's got the trademark on this. Unfortunately, it's pretty broad.
Again, I can't speak for Ken's views, but he is a man that clearly wants to give people a fair hearing, instead of praising himself and chastising everyone else. His words on politics are 1,000 times more intelligent than your favorite comedian breaking into an unhinged rant about how evil the other guys are. What you're doing here, Camster, is the equivalent of saying that The Boy Who Cried Wolf is a story about wolf violence, then declaring it a bad story because it didn't give a thesis statement about what to do to stop wolf violence. You think you're being really clever, but you're just exposing to everyone else in the room that the point flew over your head.
But even to do that, the game tries to make some rather creepy false equivalencies between setting up a systemically racist government that persecutes other religions and being an overzealous revolutionary that takes things a little too far. It rings false and is honestly a little emotionally manipulative, placing the life of a child right in front of you in direct comparison to the myriad of abstract, unseen crimes and suffering at the hands of Comstock.
A little too far, Camster. The only thing of the Vox Popularis revolution you're showing is the moment of victory when they rise up, not what happens after. These aren't soldiers, Camster. These aren't politicians. These are civilians. Everyday townsfolk, as you might say. Their corpses litter the streets of Emporia. Is this a little too far? This is all intended to be reminiscent of similar revolts turned riots throughout history, such as the French Revolution. While the rebels in that context had a right to be angry, what they did was not just and deserves to be framed and discussed.
These things happen, Camster, and pretending that they don't doesn't make you an intelligent analyst, it makes you an offended propagandist.
I will grant you this, though. It is emotionally manipulative to cry about dead children as a shorthanded and complex argument. This happens all the time in Second Amendment debates. No one wants children to die in schools, and there are a myriad of solutions to that problem. The people who are against gun regulations are only against them because they fear what an unchecked government will do to an unarmed populace. This is usually skipped over, with 2A supporters being accused of wanting more kids to die. So, I understand what Camster is complaining about here. It is a cheap move on the game's part, not helped by the fact that this child came literally out of nowhere, with no identity given to him until the DLC. If this were the only thing the game did, Camster would be correct. But it isn't. And Camster himself, again, proves it with his earlier footage. I swear, I could make a drinking game out of all the times Camster's footage contradicts his arguments, but we'd be dead by morning. Alright, play it.
To top that off, there are moments of real, genuine human empathy here. Elizabeth and Booker's song in the basement of the shantytown bar is obviously a highlight of the game, but there are smaller moments. Hearing how Preston Downs moves from Comstock's pocket to a member of the Resistance, a Titanic-style scene where a woman is sobbing that she can't make the jump to the lifeboat, Booker's sudden panic and rejection of his baptism. These are emotionally charged scenes that feel like real things that real people would do. They're effective, grounded, honest.
You want to give us some context for the crying woman, Campster? No, don't get up. I'll get it.
Look, that's Comstock House. If we're gonna find him, we should start there.
The Vox are coming! We need to leave the dock! We need to push off immediately! The Vox are coming!
Where are these people going?
Wherever the Vox populate.
Jump! Come on, jump! I cannot do it! I'm sorry! You need to remove your belongings or we can't take any more people! The barge is at full way! We're taking off now! It's a barge!
Now, it looks like they're trying to get away from the Vox Populi. I wonder why the husband is so desperate to get her on board. Oh, I know. He's trying to save her from this. She's in that situation because of the Vox. How is this possible? How is it possible for you to bring up the scene, then forget the context behind it? Oh, right.
It's because you think everyday townsfolk look like this.
I shouldn't be surprised. And while we're on the subject of emotional manipulation, I want to point out that the majority of the corpses in Emporia are men. Not children, men. There are no dead or dying children in Emporia. Moreover, there are very few women. You can complain about sexist stereotypes all you like, but there's no denying the fact that people tend to sympathize with women more than men. It's why we say women and children first. It's why we show crying women when we try to scare people. It's why Sword Art Online shamelessly makes its villains into sexual predators to make them easily hateable. If Infant were half as emotionally manipulative as Campster suggests, we'd be seeing more women and less men here. We don't even see any dead kins. That Infant was brave enough to make most of these corpses men suggests a desire to discuss the facts over just shoving a crying puppy in the audience's faces. Now, maybe Campster isn't trying to suggest that Infant is hiding behind the child and doing nothing else. Unfortunately, the finished product of his video matters more, and his finished product leaves out the context for the crying adult woman as well as the rest of the Vox Populi's crimes. So this video is framing Infant in a dishonest light. And I am not stopping there. There's one more juicy nugget from Campster's early footage.
Hearing how Preston Downs moves from Comstock's pocket to a member of the Resistance, these are emotionally charged scenes that feel like real things that real people would do. They're effective, grounded, honest.
You want to talk the entire story of Preston Downs, Campster? Alright, let's play it. All 4 logs. And audience, I want you to pay attention to every word of it, especially in the 3rd diary.
Comstock came by the wagon at dawn. Man was just transfixed by my trophy scalps. Asked about the white ones there. I said, well, sir, if your quarry dwells in the jungle and beds down with the local color, why split hairs? Not a chuckle out of him. Either he ain't seen a man go native or maybe too many. Anyhow, now he's got me hunting down this Daisy Fitzroy. Hope he don't expect me to stuff and mount her. Yeah. Well, Preston is a sporting man, Miss Fitzroy. I won't steal up on you while you slumber like these Vox boys here with their pig stickers. That's one scalp to me. That's 2. Now, when you hear this,
I want you to square your affairs and come die in the side of the poets. You'll need a white man's weapon. Give this a try. Well, Fitzroy, you got a little cunning in you, if nothing else. Dropped a couple grizzly traps around the lines up here. Idea was to bleed one of your couriers till he gave you up. Except, of course, you're using kids now. Now I got this tiny engine boy eyeballing me. Tried to take his leg off. Damn thing's just lying here between us. I sure wish he'd cry or something. Mr. Comstock, when we next meet, it won't be to parley. See, I went out to that Hall of Heroes to scalp your false shepherd for you. Turns out, though, DeWitt speaks Sioux. He helped me to swap words with this crippled child I've been, looking after. Now, after hearing how the kid has fared in your city, I'm thinking when we take your pelt, I'll let him hold the knife.
So let me get this straight. When Infant uses a wounded Native American child to convince Preston Downs to turn on Comstock and help the resistance, that's the game being honest, human, empathetic. But when it's using the threat of a dead white child to disillusion Elizabeth from the Vox Populi, that's emotional manipulation. And that's not all. It gets worse for Campster, honestly.
These are emotionally charged scenes that feel like real things that real people would do. They're effective, grounded, honest. They give the game a much-needed sense of humanity because so much of the game is, well, this.
Stop him! Stop him! The false shepherd's got to lead our lamb astray!
In part 1, I accused Campster of omitting the context to the scene as he presented it. Today, I'm going to show you the complete context.
Here? We've got to do something about that. Wait! It's him! Now, where'd you get that brand, boy? Don't you know that makes you the backstabbing snake in the grass false shepherd? And we ain't letting no false shepherd into our flock. Show them what we got planned, boys!
I should note that just before this moment, Booker was being made to participate in the stoning of an interracial couple. I'm leaving this out because it would take up too much time, and the point of my argument is that Fink and his men are in the wrong, regardless of the racism, as evident by the fact that they will attack you even if you agree to participate. I'm telling you all this because I want to be honest about the context. Fink and his men sentenced Booker to a public execution, a painful one at that, based on nothing but circumstantial evidence. One can only imagine how many innocents were murdered in silence because those exact initials were carved onto the backs of their hands. This scene, right here, is irrefutable proof that Booker is fighting in self-defense, even if he is a morally ambiguous anti-hero. Campster chose to omit from the same video where he would claim that Booker has no reason to kill.
It's not even that the game suffers from some severe dissonance between its play and its story, although that's certainly here. Booker will be mourning his time as a Pinkerton agent keeping the unions down, or lamenting his involvement in Wounded Knee one minute, and the next he's exploding the heads off of one person or jamming his skyhook straight into the neck of another. But more than just dissonant, the combat feels like empty, pointless filler designed to pad a game out to official retail game length TM. The violence is never at any point sufficiently justified. In Bioshock, splicers felt like monsters, but in a way they actually were. They were certainly no longer human and were driven mad either by their genetic modifications, living in a tin can at the bottom of the sea, or simply witnessing the horrors of Rapture's fall. Here, though, there's no justification for why everyday townsfolk will bum rush Booker with a suicidal fervor and insatiable bloodlust.
And I don't think that this was an accident. That context comes right before the moment that Campster cut. There is no other cutscene in the game like it. Campster knew it was there, and he left it out to preserve an argument that would have crumbled otherwise, framing that very first kill as a brutal murder. And the same goes for the Vox Populi. The scene that Campster is referencing to accuse Infinite of being emotionally manipulative comes at the tail end of the face-off with Fitzroy, in which he openly declares war on Booker.
It's done. Kill that child. Booker, we have to do something. We have to act. We need to get in there. Come on, Booker, we've got to get out of here. Boost me up. Go to the window and distract Daisy. Go!
Is this it? Is this your movement, Daisy?
This is what needs to be done. You see, the founders ain't nothing but weeds. Cut them down and they just grow back. If you want to get rid of the weed, you gotta pull it up from the root. It's the only way to get...
Elizabeth.
I guess it runs in the family.
Elizabeth. Whoa, hey, easy.
The violence is never at any point sufficiently justified.
It is objectively impossible for Campster to cite this scene without also admitting that he saw this scene. And yet, he insists that Booker is running around killing people for no reason.
Now, why is this relevant, you ask? Because it is very clear that Campster knew that he was making these edits and omissions, and made no effort to adjust or correct his arguments, opting to sell the idea that the player is fighting everyday townsfolk.
It is highly inappropriate for a man who would make these edits and omissions to then accuse Bioshock Infinite of being the emotionally manipulative party.
But instead we have this giant and monotonous murder fest with poorly designed and sloppy-feeling derivative mechanics trying to pass itself off as meaningful because of a 20-minute ending cutscene and...
And it is equally inappropriate for the same man to use an emotionally charged word like murder to describe what he knows are self-defense killings. And make no mistake, he will abuse that word one more time by the end of this. In short, Campster isn't upset that the game tried to emotionally manipulate the audience. He's upset that the game used it against him and his ideals.
Well, as long as we win, nothing else matters.
The result is a game that embarrasses itself in its attempts to offend no one.
No, it was doing the opposite. It was trying to offend everyone. This is evident by the fact that Infinite wound up on the woke games lists for no other reason than because it discussed racism. On the flip side, we have people like Anita Sarkeesian and yourself expressing contempt for his criticism of rapid revolutions.
Booker shoots his way across Columbia, getting caught up in all sorts of drama in the process, as the game tells players a garbage story which suggests that oppressed people are just as bad as their oppressors and that the truth is always somewhere in the middle. But that's much too big a can of worms for us to open in this video.
Bioshock sees the player first fight against the libertarian ideals of Andrew Ryan in Bioshock 1, and then the extremist collectivism of Sophia Lamb in Bioshock 2. Bioshock Infinite regrettably has you fight first against the racists, and then shock and awe, the people fighting the racists are just as bad. And look, Bioshock Infinite remains trash thematically, but it does fit this overall trend of the player trying to moderate to extremes, even if it's grotesque.
In short, the right hate Infinite for saying that patriotism and nationalism can go too far, and the left hate Infinite for saying that revolutions can go too far. There is nothing cowardly here. There was something cowardly in Burial at Sea's decision to backpedal on Daisy Fitzroy, but that's not what happened here in the main game.
Asking only that you find a political position somewhere left of racist dictator and somewhere right of murderous revolutionary.
No, that's not what Infinite is saying. Just as 1984 isn't saying this specific party will create a dictatorship, it's a cautionary tale on the dangers of believing that you can do no wrong. It's a warning that the ends don't always justify the means, and that just because you are fighting for the right cause doesn't mean that your actions are above criticism. And I think that's why most people didn't recognize it. We weren't as politically divided in 2013 as we are now. But seriously, look at where we're at. Look at all the riots and acts of political violence. Look at everyone on all parties shamelessly betraying their own values just so that they can win. Twitter would make it a point to censor anyone who claimed that the 2020 election was sabotaged, with many on the left rightfully claiming that it is their right despite the right's claims. Later on, an article would come out revealing that other social media platforms work together to repress information. Then Elon Musk buys Twitter, rebrands it, and suddenly the left is concerned that he has too much power over the information that voters have. Ignore that article, by the way. It doesn't exist. Republicans are currently working to rewrite the laws around term limits to give Donald Trump a third term, all without any consideration for how this would affect politics in the future. Then lastly, we have Justin Trudeau, who exercised emergency powers to freeze the banking accounts of political dissidents. The left, who had previously prided themselves on being anti-fascist, standing up against the tyrannical Trump regime, turned a blind eye to it. After all, he was on their side. It looked bad if they pointed it out, so they pretended it didn't happen. And that's assuming that they weren't actively cheering him on.
Well, as long as we win, nothing else matters.
And on top of it all, political violence is becoming more and more the norm, creating a world where bullets are preferable to words. All of these and more are examples of how both the left and the right betrayed their values the second it became inconvenient to stand by them. And make no mistake, I stand on one of these teams. I voted in the last election, and I believe that I cast my vote for the correct candidate. I praise Infinite not because it tells me that I'm a good person, but because it serves as a reminder to me as to what I should never, ever allow myself to become. No one wants to talk with each other anymore. The left views the right as irredeemably evil, and the right views the left as irredeemably evil. While it is true that in a conflict of specific facts, only one side can be truly correct, and I definitely have my own stance politically, the stubborn refusal to accept that you and your own side could be wrong about any specific subject or action has led to people committing countless atrocities in the past. Infinite's warning against extremism is a massive slap in the face that many people need right now. Maybe the problem here is that Infinite came out 10 years too early.
A common criticism of centrism is that it is a passive position. Instead of taking a stand against a specific political force, the centrist tends to stall and watch.
And yes, that may be true. It may lead to a failure to act when necessary. But better to be that man than the man who shamelessly sets fire to his neighbor's home because the news called him a Nazi. And no, I'm not going to tell you where I stand politically. That's irrelevant.
And none of that matters anyway, as it drops what little political pretext it has in the rush to get to the exposition necessary for the ending.
No, it didn't. If we assume that Infinite is trying to discuss racism, you would be right. But it's discussing extremism. Following the death of Daisy Fitzroy, it shifts gears to focus on the fall of the Vox Populi, which is shown in the background of Colombia all throughout. In a story like this, shifting the focus halfway is not only acceptable, but preferable. You could argue that placing these in the background is them dropping the politics, but that would still be false. Contrary to what Campster would have you believe, Booker and Elizabeth aren't spending the first half of the game fighting through Colombia to prove to Comstock that racism is wrong. They're fighting to escape. They have no stake in the Civil War. The Civil War is strictly an obstacle to them, and no more. While they have their opinions on Comstock's racism, They are not fighting to dismantle the establishment. It was in the background in the first half every bit as much as it was in the second half. That Booker and Elizabeth are more or less neutral in this conflict further stresses Infinite's warning against extremism, showing the people who wanted no part in the conflict inevitably get dragged in and hurt by it. Even without the added context that the ending offers, Booker and Elizabeth are outsiders in this conflict who only want out. Most importantly, the fall of the Vox also contributes to Elizabeth's character. Remember, Ken Levine is not a wasteful writer. Many dishonest critics tried to frame Elizabeth as a wide-eyed, happy idealist start to finish, but the violence she sees and partakes in wails away at her. During the Finkton arc, Booker and Elizabeth are a trifle confused over whether they're traversing other realities or not. In the end, it's concluded that they were in the same reality all along, and that Elizabeth was just moving the pieces around.
Yes, we did it. I don't know if I brought us to a world where the Vox had weapons, or I created one. This is not what I meant to have happen.
Elizabeth.
They're dead, Booker.
Come on. Let's leave this place. Let's go to the factory and get our airship. This isn't our responsibility. None of it. You just opened a door to this world and we stepped through.
Are you sure, Booker? Did I just bring us to a world where Chenlin was alive, or did I create it? I told you, I always thought that my little trick was a form of wish fulfillment. I got my wish.
This means that Elizabeth is responsible for everything that the Vox Populi does. Hence, this scene.
I've been there.
Listen, I think you should talk to me. Why don't you just come out of there?
Elizabeth.
This is all I had.
Listen.
How do you do it?
How do I do what?
Forget. How do you wash away the things that you've done?
You don't. You just learn to live with it.
She's not just asking about Fitzroy here. She's asking about what she did to Chenlin and everyone else going forward. Seeing more of the Vox Populi's violence in Emporia hits her with this harder and harder.
Look at this. Fitzroy's no better than Comstock. Was she?
Once people get their blood up, it ain't easy to settle it down again.
This is on our hands, isn't it?
This reaches its apex when she tries to dismember her mother's corpse, believing that she's already fallen, so there's no point in trying to improve herself. Instead, she just wants to exact revenge on the mother she thinks wronged her.
What are we looking for?
There it is.
It's your mother's grave.
They have her preserved in an airtight chamber. Fingerprints will get us into Comstock House.
She's your
A
mother.
mother who abandons their child doesn't draw a lot of sympathy in my book.
Take a moment to think about what you're doing.
There. Do you open the door, or do I have to go in without you?
Elizabeth.
It's her. How are you, Mother? All locked up in there, huh? Looks like you and I have some common ground.
Let me do it.
No.
Let me do it.
This is what the Vox Populi revolt adds to the main story. Ken Levine may not use these elements the way you would prefer, but he does use them.
The ending. I'm not going to go through the trouble of trying to work out what happened. There are plenty of videos and forum posts where the actual logistics are being torn apart.
By people who have never heard of an ambiguous ending before, but go on.
What confuses me about the ending isn't literally what happened, but what those events are supposed to mean. What we're supposed to take away from them, if anything. I've got my theories, none of which are particularly flattering to the game, but this video's run too long already.
Well, you could have said something, Camster. It would certainly help to bolster your credibility after the embarrassingly bad arguments thus far.
Remember Ken's challenges with writing Christianity? And the long conversation he had that led to him understanding his view of forgiveness?
This moment greatly influenced the final draft of the story, in which Ken invoked a theme and arc of Elizabeth learning the importance of forgiveness. I'm not making this up. Here's a montage.
To those who loved me, I was the most generous of souls. There was no pain I would deny them, no betrayal I would not gladly give. And when I had scorched the hearts of all who loved me, the prophet said, "There is nothing you can do for which I will not forgive you. For God has granted me sight, and through his eyes, even you are loved." Tonight, the prophet moved against his political enemies. He preaches mercy, but 40 souls lie tonight dead in unmarked graves. If a man was ever unworthy of grace, who would be my husband? But when I was beyond redemption, he offered it anyway. How can I deny forgiveness to one who with love granted it to me? I know the prophet is a liar, but he cannot be. I know the prophet is a murderer, but he cannot be. For if the future lies only in the imagination of God, why would he reveal it to such a monster? Lutez says the bastard is a creation not of her womb, but of some unholy science. I do not know which is true. The child is no more divine than I. What says that for my husband's prophecy? He begs my silence, but I can only offer him forgiveness. But with repentance need come truth. I can suffer his lies no longer.
Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. But in the end, he is the one who'll have to pay down all of our accounts, won't he? Where does his guilt start? And mine end? As the days pass, I believe less in God and more in Lutez. My powers shrivel as my regrets blossom. All of this because my father failed me. By the time I realized how far I'd gone, it was too late to stop it. But there is still one last chance at redemption for both of us. Like my father, I could see all that would be, might be, and must not be. And what did the Lord receive in return for his gifts? Eve and her apple, Sodom and Gomorrah. Humanity wrote a bad check, and the flood was the only way to settle accounts. For what is Columbia, if not a different arc in a different time? A man once promised me that he would free me of my chains. But in the end, he abandoned me to serve his own needs. But in some ways, I thank him. He showed me exactly how much faith our species deserved. God put his faith in men once too. It seems that we have something in common. Disappointment. I did not always love the prophet. In truth, I ran from his embrace. I even denied that I was his. I followed a man who seemed to be everything my father was not. That man was a false shepherd. And when the wolves came for me, he was nowhere to be found. I am here to finish my father's work. As he baptized me with water, I shall baptize the Sodom below with fire and prepare it for the coming of the Lord. Are we worth saving if we will not save ourselves? There will be no salvation until the fire floods the cities and covers the plains. Once this world has been born again, 1,000,000 others wait their turn.
In order for Elizabeth to overcome the destiny that the multiverse has locked her in, she has to learn to forgive. First by forgiving Lady Comstock, which grants them access to Comstock House, then through her older self forgiving Booker for his failings and reaching out to him.
He pretended to love me. I am not your husband's bastard. I am his victim. My days of victimhood are done. We must forgive each other. Because there's one far worse than you, Rob. The prophet killed me because you wouldn't keep his secret. If that's so, then why am I alive? Not in this world. Maybe this is you in another. A world where you never meet him. Or where I saved him. I don't know. Is that possible? Find out, child. Find out.
What I've done cannot be undone. I cannot stop what I have put in motion. But perhaps I can keep it from ever starting. He was my first hope. And now, he is my last.
Who's coming?
Songbird. He always stops you.
Yes, but I would find a way.
No. It's too late for me. I brought you here for your sake. Yours and hers. Here.
What is this?
It's for her. She'll know how to read it.
What does it say?
It's advice.
Advice on what?
How not to become me.
Comstock's final move as an antagonist is to challenge this very development in Elizabeth's character.
Stand back. I'm ending this.
Booker, no. This is between me and him.
You are walking into a trap.
I need to do this.
Come here, child. Oh, come on, I don't bite. My, oh my, how you have grown.
Tell me, what am I?
Look at you, child. You're
Hey,
a mess.
let go of her.
Elizabeth, everything I've done to keep you safe.
Safe from what?
Seed of the prophet shall sit the throne and drown in flame the mountains of man. But the archangel revealed something else. Beware, prophet. Beware the false shepherd, Booker DeWitt. For he shall be as a wall between her and destiny.
Why?
DeWitt, I'm a fool. I've sent mighty armies to stop you. I've rained fire on you from above. I did all of that to keep you from her, when all I needed was to tell her the truth. Ask him, child. Ask him what happened to your finger. Ask DeWitt.
Let go of me.
Ask him.
She's your daughter, you son of a bitch! And you abandoned her! Oh, was it worth it? Huh? Did you get what you wanted?
Booker.
Tell me!
Booker.
Tell me!
It is
Nothing is finished!
Booker.
You locked her up for her whole life!
Booker.
You cut off her finger, and you put it on me!
Booker, stop it! You killed him. What did he mean? Huh? You tell me, what did he mean about my finger?
I don't know. I just assumed you were born with it. I don't know.
Your nose. It's bleeding.
What? Elizabeth, I swear to you, I have no idea what he was talking about.
You too. You just can't remember it.
No. I'll prove it to you. We'll destroy the siphon. The answer's behind one of your doors. You just have to open it.
Destroy the siphon? It's the entire tower, Booker. How are we gonna do that?
I don't know, but I'll think of something on the way.
When Elizabeth regains full control of her powers by destroying the siphon and learns the full truth, she does the exact opposite of what Comstock suspects. She forgives Booker. That was the key to resolving all of this, as neither she nor Booker were ever able to even get close to the siphon until Elizabeth started practicing forgiveness.
We've gotta stop them.
No, that's the E.
No, that is
Booker,
separate.
hurry.
No, it's not.
It is.
Isn't.
Is.
Isn't.
Is.
Try again.
No, you try.
Fine.
Stop it! Stop it! You don't know what you're doing!
No, that is not it.
There it is. You've done it now. He's coming back. He's coming back.
The notes were correct.
The instrument was not.
One needs both to get his attention.
But if you know how to sing to him,
He will take you where you need to go.
Who are you?
we are where we are needed.
And needed where we are.
So Comstock uses these songs. Are there others we can use? Something to keep the bird off our back?
Perhaps you should ask the maestro himself.
So where is he? Of course. Well, at least they left the piano.
This doesn't make any sense. Everything here is a cipher that I understand except for this symbol. It's a cage. Did she say anything about this?
No.
Cage. Cage, what is that?
Now what?
What is she trying to tell us? Cage. Cage, I'm missing something.
They said they knew what was best for us.
Booker?
They said they knew what was coming next. Did you see this coming, old man? Did you see this coming?
Think they mean to board us.
You ain't gonna place your daughter on the throne. We're gonna place her in a plane.
What are you doing?
We have to get him!
Sing to who? Elizabeth, stop it!
Hey!
It's not a word, Booker! It's a song! It's okay. I need you to protect me. Will you do it? Will you do this for me? Just this one last thing. Go! Booker, he'll help us. We can use him against the box.
In short, not only did Infinite say something, politically, personally, and even mechanically, but what it said is more relevant today than it was when it initially came out.
I'll close by saying this. As much as I hated, and I mean really detested, Bioshock Infinite's core gameplay,
Because you didn't engage with its mechanics even once, but go on.
I kept playing because of those flashes of humanity. What propelled me forward wasn't fat loot or awesome headshots or flashy set pieces of explosions.
Yeesh, talk about pretentious.
It was seeing a sad monster horrified of what he'd become. It was awkward conversations with Elizabeth getting defensive about her finger. It was a father screaming out in defense of his child. It was a girl experiencing freedom and dance for once in her life. These are moments I legitimately loved in this game. Moments that will stick with me. But we can't let games be human and artful in bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces is what makes those moments work. If you have too much of this or that, it becomes normal and dull. These moments hit because they are infrequent and come at us at the right times.
Honesty and integrity and empathy aren't like marshmallows and Lucky Charms. They're not meant to be the small good parts surrounded by the fluff of machine gun fire and murder. And they're not like the lollipop we get for being a good kid at the dentist. They're not the sweet reward we get at the end for putting up with all this tacky combat.
First off, self-defense killing is not murder. And here we have Campster chastising the use of story as reward once again. I discussed this before at the start, but I need to pick this apart one more time. Campster likes to go on and on about how the interactive element of games are a pivotal component of the art form. And he isn't necessarily wrong for that. But there's more to it than that. And the other key feature is how those bits of interaction make us feel. The feeling of fear when we're in a corner, of frustration or loss when we fail a challenge. More than that, though, is the feeling that all games should have in common. The one feeling that all games should have in common. The satisfaction of accomplishment. When I was a child, I had the original Spyro the Dragon with a PlayStation 2. No PlayStation 1 memory card attached. The result was that I had to restart the game every time I turned it off, because I couldn't save. This had the effect of making the journey of Spyro far longer for me than for most players. When I finally reached Nasty's world, I felt like I had reached the end of an odyssey. A feeling carried over into the admittedly clumsy Legend of Spyro reboot. They turned what was once a collectathon platformer into a combat game, with a darker and more serious story. I despised the core gameplay due to how tedious it was. The MP bar was far too low for one to use the powers effectively, and MP was too rare to properly restore. Players had to rely on an extremely dull and lackluster melee system, making the gameplay boring at best and frustrating at worst. But at no point would I have said that it was at odds with the story. The story was trying, albeit unsuccessfully, to be a big epic. Because of this, whenever I finally made it past those frustrating hordes of enemies, I felt a tremendous sense of ownership and immersion with Spyro, feeling as though we are overcoming the same obstacles together. Again, the gameplay wasn't good, and it's for that reason that I didn't use this as an example earlier, but the feeling that accompanied each cutscene was worth it. And it wasn't just these games. Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper, Uncharted, and many, many more gave me the same feeling. Nowadays, the only games that give me this feeling on a massive scale are Japanese role-playing games.
You've grown strong. Let us settle this here and now, Lord of Calamity.
I swear, we'll finish this! We will devour all this hatred!
Excellent! Give up your fight. I will end the world's sadness. I have to end it!
Arthur has forgotten Maxim! Don't despair!
Spoken like a true hero.
It's what you told me once, long ago.
On the day of the opening, Velvet, the Arthur you knew, died that day. It was always there, and in the back of my mind. If only it hadn't been Celica and my son who were killed that day. If only it had been you two instead.
I thought the same thing. So many times. If it had been us, then I know you would have fought to save the world for us.
It's true. I wanted to save everyone. Such a pity.
This scene was the culmination of months of hard work. In addition to going through a campaign that was already fairly long on its own, I had to take regular breaks from the plot just to grind, leveling up to stay ahead of the game. This is par for the course for every JRPG. Every one is a project in and of itself, and that's what makes the experience so magical. In addition to spending time with these characters, which you can do in any medium, I feel like I'm working with them. Just as they're putting their heads together to figure out what to do, I'm planning out how long I'm going to have to grind and what equipment I'm going to have to use in any scenario, so I'm ready for the next challenge. This all culminates in a moment of tremendous satisfaction when I finally reach the end of the journey, followed by a bit of sadness as I realize it's time to say goodbye to these characters I was traveling with. You want little narrative resonance? It's right here.
If only it had been you two instead.
I thought the same thing. So many times. If it had been us, then I know you would have fought to save the world for us.
If there was a button I could press to skip to this cutscene, I wouldn't touch it. To demand that we not have these moments locked behind gameplay is to complain that you shouldn't have to subject yourself to tension before the happiness in an action-adventure movie, scares before closure in a horror movie, tears before resolution in tearjerkers. It's a shameless, naked portrayal of everything the mediums and genres stand for, all done in the name of supposedly pushing the medium forward.
There are things we need to be demanding our games simply be. Sneaking in a quiet moment or saccharine song between meaningless violence isn't going to push this medium forward, and no number of 10 out of 10 reviews is going to change that.
Yes, Campster, you're right. We won't improve the industry by throwing around empty praise, but we aren't going to improve it by sterilizing the industry to make it palatable for people who never liked it and never will like it. Instead, we need to stand our ground. Infinite's violence did not contradict this story. It only made it hard to show to judgmental non-gamers. Judgmental non-gamers who enjoy just as much action in a film. And honestly, who cares? If they try to make fun of you, you should scoff at them, not water down your hobby in a vain attempt at capturing what counts as high art to strangers.
Bioshock Infinite's ambitions to be an affecting game aren't core to its experience. They aren't core to its gameplay. Instead, we simply glimpse them between the cracks of the edifice, the way the Fink brothers overheard brilliance through the Lutece tears. And much like a jazz band cover of a Tears for Fears song, it's an imitation that strives for success it doesn't understand nor rightfully deserve.
Well, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? You spent the entire review blatantly misrepresenting how the story and gameplay function with each other, showcasing that you never engaged with the mechanics even once, despite playing the game twice, and focusing strictly on the surface level interpretation of a political story that is clearly saying something far broader and deeper. I think the one who doesn't understand anything is you. But truthfully, I don't think you're a horrible person, Campster. Rather, I just think you made a bad review. Originally, I was going to end this response with a much harsher chastisement, quoting your description verbatim. You made a bad critique. Worse, an easy to refute bad critique. Feel bad for yourself. But something made me change my mind.
There's machine gun fire against lead. God, smug jackass. I, I fully empathize with everyone who writes horrible things about me watching this.
That bit of humility and humor made me remember that for all the deceit and incompetence, there is still a person behind this review. And to shamelessly attack you, insulting you, and tearing away at your ego until there is nothing left, would have made me the very thing that Infinite warned us all not to become. So, as an act of respect, I'm going to be kind.
Much of what I said throughout this video came from a place of genuine frustration. The more I watched your critique, the more holes and contradictions I saw, and the fact that there are people out there that think this critique was well thought out infuriated me. Because of this, I did let my anger pour out. I did what I could to mitigate it. However, there were some things that I genuinely believe that Campster needed to be chastised for, such as his blatant misrepresentation of key plot points. Campster, if you are able to make it to this point, then thank you. You have my respect, and I would definitely be open to an honest dialogue if you would allow it.
I don't expect Campster to watch any of this response. Much less do I expect him to make it to the end. But if you do, Campster, I want you to understand that I don't believe that you are a reliable source. There are just too many contradictions and comments made out of pure ignorance. And when Judas comes out, I will be keeping a close eye on you. And if I have a rebuttal, which I likely will, I will give it with utmost respect.
And thus ends the Errant Signal series. I swear, I didn't intend for this to be a 5-hour epic when I started. I just had so much evidence and so many things to say. But now I think I'm ready to take on the biggest Infinite critic of them all. See you all for episode 3.
It's like, you kind of just want to ask, like, Ken Levine, like, so what was your opinion on the slave revolts that happened in the United States? Like, what was your opinion on, like, the West Virginian miners that, like, risked their lives striking against their, like, rich northern masters?
Because it makes no attempt to morally equivocate or it does morally equivocate, I guess, the mountain of systemic racism and oppression going on in Colombia with the violence that they're enacting against their oppressors. They are equally bad. And that's really where the game kind of is offensive.
Like, the argument, like, if you're listening to the evil propaganda she's speaking, which is, like, being, like, her propaganda is supposed to, at this point, like, draw direct comparisons to Comstock. Comstock was basically saying some people are just worse, and we should build our whole society around that idea so that we, the people who are not worse, can live comfortable, happy lives. And Daisy's saying they will oppress you and enslave you, and Daisy's correct, because that's what's already happening.
And this is part of why I wanted to ask you about what you think would happen if the Bioshock games were released today, because we now view everything through such a political lens in a way that, yes, I mean, you can't avoid that in a game like Bioshock Infinite or in a movie like One Battle After Another. It is political art. At the same time, I think there are people who are viewing these things not as art, just as politics.
Right.
And that seems to me like it seems to me like that is, I guess maybe my question is that constraining for video games as an industry, for art? I mean, do you, like, it seems like you have tried to avoid that, but you also, your last release was in 2014, and so you have not put something out quite into the world that we exist in now. How do you see this affecting, this kind of art and culture?
It was definitely getting more there in 2014. Like, there was a reaction, the moment in Infinite where the revolutionary group, we've made clear, has their own moral challenges versus the oppressor, the oppressor group, which, you see the founders of the city. But the revolution is an extremely bloody and violent revolution, like most revolutions often tend to be, right? If you know the history of revolutions, most of them, I mean, the American Revolution was relatively squeaky clean, but there was still a lot of death and a lot of, people, cleansed out, the loyalists being, chased out and imprisoned of their homes. It was a mess, but most revolutions, I think the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, they really devolved into sort of a bit of a mess. And there were people who were pretty angry at the fact that I portrayed the revolutionary side as also having their own challenges. And that was interesting because it was the first sort of, we try to be very fair to everybody, and we try to explain why they were so angry and why that might spin out of control. Suddenly they're in charge, and Russian Revolution, Maoist Revolution. These are all not great examples of immediate peace and harmony. And so I got a lot of crap about that because there was a very particular viewpoint that it was racist or something to assume that group of sort of the underclass or the the marginalized group would not stage a purely noble revolution. So I got a bit of that. Probably if it came out in 2020, would have been a much bigger conversation too, and that might have made some people very nervous. But to me, that's never a disincentive to. I think a writer, if you're not going to be brave about these things, well, you shouldn't be a writer. And I think I reacted to it at first, and I was freaked out about it. All of a sudden, always people are saying all these things about me, and I had to be like, get over it and say, look, Ken, look at the work, talk to a bunch of people. I think it was pretty fair. I think it lines up historically. And you know what? If you're afraid and you're afraid to write things, people are gonna get mad at you. Well, you're not very much of a writer.